You feature in this film some pretty harrowing footage of a drone strike. Can you just firstly tell us how you came to get hold of this footage? How were you allowed to show footage of this nature where essentially you're seeing a bunch of very trigger-happy people looking for an excuse to attack what it looks like to be an innocent convoy of civilians?
The footage that we show of this strike is a reenactment, but this reenactment is based on the transcripts of the radio traffic transcripts of the conversation between the drone pilot and his sensor operator, and the 2,000-page investigation file of this incident. So I had access to the investigation file that includes maps, photographs, photographs of the aftermath of the strike, descriptions of what had happened, interviews with almost everyone involved, including the victims and the survivors and even their medical records. So I chose this specific strike and these victims and survivors to interview because I had this paperwork, this investigation file, and I could have interviewed many other victims and survivors, but in this case, I could be absolutely sure that this had happened the way we are telling the story in the film. And so I chose the transcript, the conversation between the drone crew is 80 pages long, and it was actually very hard for me to choose certain parts because it's completely representative. You can, over the course of I think 6 hours or so, the drone crew is following these cars and these all these people that they later on attacked, and they are so trigger happy over and over again, and they were just trying to find a reason to strike, so it seems, and that's what I wanted to show in the film.
It's absolutely harrowing the way that you show how even when you're looking at people, when the people with their fingers on the triggers are looking at their supposedly the enemy, how they are looking for any excuse to fire their weapon, how abstracted the whole engagement becomes. One would have thought that the opposite would occur.
Well, I think one of the big problems is that the drone crews, the people operating the drones, are often very far away from the target areas. So they are detached. They often, at least in this specific case, they didn't know the cultural context. So there's a little scene in the film where the families are praying, and they are leaving the cars, and they have their prayer carpets, and they are praying on the ground, which is normal in a Muslim country. They were doing their one of their daily prayers, and the people who were watching them through drones on almost the other side of the world, they thought that praying, that the people were getting out of the cars, that they were praying was a preparation for an attack. So it really seems that they were not aware of the cultural context, and that's just one of the problems with the drone war. They were just they're very, very far away. They didn't understand kind of the country, the culture, the religion, and yes, and I think just watching them on screen, often in black and white, increase this feeling that they are not watching and targeting real people.
It's extraordinary. And just to make clear, so all the audio and the vision from that sequence, that's a recreation from a transcript?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So it's a verbatim recreation of the transcript. We paid a lot of attention to detail. And I spoke to, not just the veterans and whistleblowers in my film, but to, additional ones and people who are familiar with this kind of material. Were saying that it sounds and looks pretty real.
Mm. Now, at what stage did Wim Wenders and Errol Morris get involved in the production of this film?
I approached Wim Wenders during the development, the research and development phase. I had no prior contact to either of them. I contacted Wim Wenders' assistant and, asked for an appointment and waited, that he would have time. He's a very, very busy and productive filmmaker. And once he had time for an appointment, I showed him my work in progress. I had made a fundraising trailer, and while he was watching it, he said, "Whatever I can do to help you, I will do." And I said, "Do you want to be my executive producer?" And he said yes. And the reason I had approached him, and then later on we approached Errol Morris together, is that I wanted to have an additional layer of protection for my project. Mm-hmm. I knew that there was, risk involved in making this type of film, working with whistleblowers, with people who had top secret clearances. And I thought that having these, famous filmmakers attached to the project, these famous directors, would make it more difficult for the government to intimidate me and my protagonist.
Now, in the film, Heather, I think quite wisely, voices concern about whether what she's doing, the article that she wrote for The Guardian, is actually going to end up having any impact at all, given the culture of information glut that we live in at the moment. Sonia, do you share any of those concerns that with the cacophony of 1,000 voices screaming at people all the time from 1,000 different platforms, 1,000 different media channels, that this is actually going to have any impact?
We are already seeing impact now. At screenings of the film, our audience members are coming out. Some of them, are crying and are very disturbed and in shock, and have been telling us that they had no idea that, either this was happening or that, that they didn't know how the people are affected by this drone war, and the people who are, operating the drones, and then, of course, the people in the target countries, because you so rarely see their stories. So I think it has an impact, and this is not a loud and screaming film. I think this film is subtle. It's from what I've been seeing, it's really moving people, and it's moving them to think about the subject and discuss it, and it creates a lot of thoughts and discussion. The Q&As are very, very long after the film screenings, and then we also have, we're starting to have some political impact as well. We've been speaking to members of parliament in the of the European, German, and UK parliament. We recently spoke with a staff member of a U.S. senator who was at one of our screenings and was very impacted by the film, and said this is really a film about the people and the human beings. And for him, it's not even political. It's about the people, and it's important that it is seen. I'm optimistic. I think it is creating a lot of discussion. That's what we wanted, and we are even hearing that people from the military and veterans are responding very, very positively. I actually gave an interview to British Armed Forces TV and radio, and we talked about the post-traumatic stress disorder and what kind of help is out there for military personnel and veterans of the drone program.
Well, Sonia, you do deserve congratulations for making a very humanist film about drone warfare, and also highlighting, as you mentioned during our chat, about the rush of technology and how it's usually ethics and rules and modes and codes of behaviour that usually have to chase the technology and have to try to catch up. That the ability of technology usually gives vent to some of the more primal urges of people, especially of warriors during war. So congratulations on the film. I do have just one final thing I just wanted to mention to you just as we wrap up. I have noticed that women are are playing a huge part in the telling of this war. I recently spoke with Susanna White, who directed half of the episodes of Generation Kill, a very good miniseries about the American involvement in the Middle East. Tina Fey was in charge of adapting the Taliban Shuffle book into the film, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And of course, Catherine Bigelow made The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. You have made this film. Why do you think women are playing such a big part in the telling of the story of this war?
Well, I personally think women are not playing a big enough part because, we are half of the population and women are, just as affected by war and conflict as men are. And in some cases, they even play, in my mind, a larger role that people don't even talk about because, in times of crisis, in times of conflict and war, women take responsibility not just for themselves, but for the children and the elders. And they are the ones when the men go out and fight who care for the survival of the communities. And then in addition, we've been seeing with the recent wars that women also take on combat roles. So that's why I personally think it's very, very important that women write about war, that women make films about war and conflict and national security, because I think we look out more to, capture our sides of the stories as well and the perspectives of women, which have been, largely neglected in the past.